There was some type of incident that happened in the summer of 1985, and it happened in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is known for always being very alive and with music playing in the street. And with the big palm street trees swaying aside, can you imagine that? And the hum of traffic even after midnight. Yeah, it's like they never sleep, never sleep. But beneath the glow of city lights, something else was moving. Something else was moving in the dark. It was a man. It was a man who slipped through windows. I am not kidding. And through windows, guys, while the city was asleep. And when he left behind silence, terror, and death. His name was Richard Ramirez. Does that sound familiar to you? Yes, his name was Richard Ramirez. Though the world would come to know him only as the Night Stalker, of course. You're stalking people and going through their windows. Of course, yes. Who cares about his name? We're not going to know him by his name. We're going to know him as a Night Stalker. He didn't hunt for money. No. Or revenge. He didn't care who his victims were. No, siree. To him, the city was like a map of open doors. Old, young, rich, poor. If you were asleep, with the window cracked open, you were fair game. Yes. In April 1984, his first known victim was found in her small apartment in Los Angeles. And then, that's when the first victim that was the first victim. And no one, the police, they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure things out. No one connected the dots at that time because, it would take months for the police to actually figure it out, and more bodies, before the police could actually realize what they were actually dealing with. And so by early 1985, the attacks had become a pattern, a pattern of nightmares, like the Nightmare on Elm Street. Have you ever seen that movie? He broke in late at night, when everyone was sleeping, always between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning. What time do you all go to sleep? Are you all in a deep sleep around that time? I know I am. And so, he used some type of 22 caliber pistol and a knife, and when he was, I guess, trying to murder his murder these people. And the worst of it all is that sometimes he would even use a hammer or a tire iron. Oh my gosh, that's the worst way to die. Oh my goodness. He would shoot, he would stab, he would strangle. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. And then he would just vanish into the night before anyone could react. I mean, he must been really possessed. I'm not kidding, very possessed. Because how can somebody have the energy to do that? People started to wake up afraid. I know, I understand that. Hardware stores, they couldn't keep locks on the shelves. Of course, everybody went to the store, to buy locks, and of course they would be out of stock. Families nailed their windows shut, slept with the lights on. I know I would have. Would you sleep with the lights on if that was happening in your town? And kept phones by the bed, of course. I always have my cell phone near me. You never know what can happen around you. Not in these days and times. Los Angeles, a city that prided itself on freedom and movement, was suddenly afraid of the dark. Yes, at one crime scene, a detective found something very strange. It was a single dusty footprint left on a windowsill. A mistake. He thought he had everything covered, right? Everything covered. It was an Avia shoe, size 11 and a half. Wow, that's a big size shoe. An uncommon brand at the time. Okay, so that print reappeared again and again. Yes, remember what I told you before? It had to be a constant murdering of people for them to figure things out. So that print reappeared again and again, and then each time, and it confirmed that one terrible truth, that the same man was behind them all, and the police had almost nothing else. He wore gloves, left few fingerprints, and killed in different neighborhoods, from Los Angeles to San Francisco. That's a large stretch, with no connection between the victims. And the press called him the Night Stalker, like I told you, and the name stuck. So by mid-July, the city was, of course, very paralyzed. They were just totally paralyzed. And every night you would hear sirens, echoed. And every morning headlines carried another photo of a crime scene tape. How awful to think of these people, all these victims dying because of that man that's killing. And then the mayor held emergency meetings. The governor demanded results. He wanted answers. He wanted results. And still, the Night Stalker kept on moving, like I just said. Then came the break investigators. The investigators had been praying. Prayer works, remember that. Praying for been praying, okay? So one of his stolen cars were found abandoned. Prayer works, just like I said. They found a stolen car that was abandoned. And inside, technicians dusted for prints. Yay! They dusted for prints. Finally, after all those killings and all those victims dead, under the rear view mirror, they found one clear fingerprint. That is all that it takes. Yes, guys, all that it takes. One clear fingerprint. It was unwashed, untouched. And when they ran it through the system, it hit instantly. Thanks for the technology these days. And so the name flashed on the screen. Do you remember what I told you from the beginning, what his name was? Yes, Richard Ramirez. He was a young fella, age 25. Very young. Drifter with a long record of theft and drugs. Well, of course, I knew a normal person wouldn't just do something like that. They had to be something wrong with them. And then so within hours, his face was everywhere. It was in the newspaper, it was on television, it was on the radio. And reporters, they read out the warning, bing, 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 be on the lookout for Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. He is armed and extremely dangerous. Yes, finally, I'm glad they were doing something about it. So the man who had once moved in shadows, now could not anymore hide anywhere. On the morning of August 31, 1985, Ramirez walked into a convenience store in East Los Angeles. Are you all familiar with East Los Angeles? Let me know. He picked up a newspaper and froze. I can't imagine what they mean, like this. Like froze, like what do they mean he froze? I don't know. His own mugshot was on the front page. People around him began to stare. Well, of course, his face was on everywhere, the newspaper, on television. And then someone whispered and said, "That's him, that's him." Then someone else shouted it louder, "That's the Night Stalker! That's the Night Stalker!" Panic broke loose. I could just imagine it was just, an awful moment, an awful night. Oh my goodness. Ramirez ran into the streets, sprinting through alleys. While he was 25, if he was taking drugs, I just can imagine jumping fences. But, East Los Angeles had enough. The man ran after him, shouting for others to block the way. And then one man hit him with a metal bar, and then another pinned him to the ground. Finally, they caught him. And I was so happy that has happened, because I was afraid this man was going to get away. And then by the time the police arrived, he was bruised, bleeding, of course, and surrounded by a lot of angry people. Yeah, of course they were angry. I would have been angry too. Wouldn't you have been angry? And then after months of fear, Los Angeles finally was able to breathe. And then the people had caught the man. The man the city had been hunting. And then at his trial, Ramirez, he seemed to be almost proud. Well, something is definitely wrong with him. How can anybody feel proud of killing people? No, somebody in their right mind wouldn't be feeling like that. I'm sorry. I mean, he smiled at the camera. He's a loony. And then flashed a pentagram drawn on his hand and said, "Evil is always present." Yeah, well, we have evil everywhere, of course. But he never apologized for it. Never looked at the families of those he killed. He owes these family an apology, and that's for sure. Now, the trial lasted nearly 4 years. That's a long time for, a trial. It lasted 4 years. And then in 1989, a jury found him, what do you think? Guilty, guilty, guilty. 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, and 11 sexual assaults. The judge sentenced him to death, And Ramirez was sent to San Quentin State. Are you all familiar with that state? It was a Quentin State prison where he was sent to, and where he was going to spend the rest of his life on death row. Yes, he definitely deserves that. He died of cancer in 2013 at the age of 33 years old. Very young kid. But for those who lived through 1985, his name, still sends a chill, down the spine, because his crimes weren't about money, you see, or even hatred. They were about fear, pure and simple. Yes. And then that fear changed Los Angeles forever. And today, the story of the Night Stalker stands at one of the darkest chapters in American crime history. Sometimes it walks our streets and knocks at our doors and looks through windows when we sleep. Keep your curtains closed. Keep your windows locked. In these days and times, things are getting crazy. So guys, look, I want to make sure that you don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to leave a comment, and also turn that ding 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 bell on so that you will always be notified when I come out with new videos and when I upload new stories.